Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in with a very late Gridman episode 9 impressions. I know that the next episode is coming out in like 24 hours. It's almost there, but I still want to talk about this particular episode, episode 9, because it was a really interesting episode. But before I get into that, you might notice that my voice sounds different. It's just I'm still working in a compromised setting, and not the same setup that I usually have. So that's why that's happening. Anyway, back to Gridman. Gridman episode 9 was super interesting. One thing to note for sure though, before we get into like the story of it, in terms of the technicality of the episode, when you look at a lot of the scenes in the Gridman episode, there were a lot of really nice close-ups. Like you had a lot of these like close-up shots, and you could also tell that they were kind of going for a kind of artistic setup to the episode, right? There is the visuals, I guess, of the red light, and that red light distinguishes between the different scenes. You know, you had the red light, then you transition to another scene, so that was really good. And again, in terms of the direction, this episode was doing things very differently, and it was overall pretty interesting. A lot of the sequences were also kind of abstract in terms of how they were working out, like when you have all the kids running up to something, or even Akane running away. It was all very interesting, and I'm curious as to, you know, what made them go so creative with the way they presented their scenes in this episode. I think that's something really good for episode 9. Now, what I really want to talk about in episode 9 is, of course, Akane. She has pretty much skyrocketed in interest every episode that she's had a principal focus in. Mind you, on a personal level, I still really don't like the character, but that's good. That's good. Like I'm a firm believer in apathy is the worst thing that you can have to a character, whereas love and hate are probably the better things. In the case of Akane, however, it's a more interesting situation because from what we've seen so far, we can see that this is a flawed character. So when a writer is writing in the flaw, and you know, if someone's responding to that flaw, I think that's a good or a well-written character. So Akane continues to just be a nice emotional treat because I dislike her so much, and I just love seeing her stupidity just kind of unleash itself in the story. And mind you, stupidity is a bit of a harsh word, but there is a bit of an illogical nature to Akane, and especially when you see the way that she talks. Mind you, you had that sensation from the second episode when she was complaining about how she was going to kill people that she doesn't like, right? She's had this naive type personality, but this episode took it a whole other level, because in this episode you have these lines being thrown in there like, this is how things were supposed to be, this is what her life should have been with those three, right? And then throughout the three situations, you get to see some very interesting distinctions between the three people that she was substituting herself into. And then when you consider some things, you realize that her line about this is how things should have been doesn't make sense, and it's only a girl pouting or throwing a tantrum. We'll begin with Yuta. Now, the distinction with Yuta is that she is fully overriding another person's existence, right? She's overriding Rika's existence in Yuta's life, right? Now, here's the first big thing. If Akane is the god of this world and all those people are meant to be her friends, then, you know, when she did the initial run through and she let Rika go out there and go fraternize with Yuta, like, it's done. It's done. She could have been this person in this scenario, but she wasn't. She just flat out isn't Rika. So it's interesting to say that, for her to say that this is how everything should have been, and then just overriding the experience of someone who's technically less than her. It was just very interesting, but that one just shows you, I think, directly how nonsensical that initial complaint is. And it all comes from the perspective that she could have very easily have taken that place in Yuta's life just normally, but at the beginning of the story, she just didn't. She didn't put in the work, and that's not like a big thing. She doesn't put in the work, and she expects to have everything fall into her laps, which again plays into that initial naivety that you see in episode 2, or not naivety, but you know, that logical gap between cause and effect, pretty much. So with Yuta, you have her substituting Rika. Now, there was something very interesting about Rika that comes out in this potential moment, or sorry, in this moment that could potentially be about Rika. In Akane's version of events, she flat out tells Yuta that, hey, they're dating. So I think it's really interesting because Rika's been kind of becoming less interesting as the episodes go on. But I think Akane just pushed something. In the first episode, Rika was kind of upset at Yuta and she thought that he was messing with her. When you realize that Akane fully took the place of Rika's life, when you realize that she's living in Rika's house with Rika's mother, and she says that she's dating Yuta, I think that's a soft nod that right before Yuta lost his memory, he might have asked Akane, he might have asked Rika out. He might have asked just to start a relationship with her, and that's really interesting. Now, mind you, I don't believe they had like a very strong relationship. I think it was just he confessed and then the memory wipe happens. But it's just very interesting, and it's interesting that Akane might have soft confirmed that by being more direct than Rika. So very interesting stuff on that side, and I think that's something that we could look forward to in the future to see if that pans out. The next person I want to talk about is Rika. Now, Rika's distinction is that she's the only person who's happening in the past, and we tell that by the uniform. The uniform appears in the ending, but we've seen what the kids are wearing in the present time. We know that the Japanese school system has 2 different uniforms. Most likely, Rika's wearing the winter uniform. So this friendship is happening in the past. Now, the question is, did this friendship happen in the past in the original timeline? I don't know. But then you talk about Akane saying that this is the life that she should have had, this is how things should have gone, and it's just, well, Akane, like, just put in the effort. You should have just put in the effort. This just sounds like a girl who's upset that she didn't put in the effort to meet these people, right? Now, Rika and Akane's whole thing, not as interesting as Yuta and Akane and Utsumi and Akane. It was just 2 girls chatting, pretty much, just them being friends. One of the highlights, of course, was Rika meeting Alexis. That was pretty cool. And that whole interaction, and then him being called the cosplayer, was also very hilarious. We move on to Utsumi, and his distinction is that this is actually based on an event that happened, right? Because you have them meeting again in that kaiju store, and that's really cool and really interesting. This is the one that could have gone in a different direction, according to, from Akane's perspective, right? Because all she had to do in the real life was simply put in the time to go follow up with Utsumi. That's all she had to do. No problem. They would have been the best of friends, right? That's all. And like, I feel really bad for Utsumi because he's talking about how, like, yeah, no good things don't happen like that quickly in such a quick succession. And that should be like the next big signal to Akane. Like, he had this life with her that just was, lack of her involvement. And it's, again, she just isn't putting in the effort to get these rewards. She's just slapping herself in there and wanting it to, like, work out. Again, the childishness of the character. There we go, my words. Overall, I think it's really cool. I found this episode really cool. I think right now it might be my favorite. I really love this episode, and I really love just seeing Akane fail and fall. And in this episode, she literally does fall. She's falling into her despair, and I like it. She deserves it. She's a dick. On the mecha fight side, I thought we saw some pretty cool, interesting things as well. We saw Max do a Gridman-less transformation with his team, and it was pretty cool. I love that. I didn't know they could do that. That was so neat. Meanwhile, you have the whole dream monster, which I also thought was really cool. I really wish that the whole Gridman getting into the dream world could have been a bit more explained. But I'm not gonna. I've already decided this show, my expectations level are just slightly above Power Ranger logic, with the exception of Akane. So I'm not gonna complain about that too much. It was just really cool to see it, and I think between Gridman and Max's group definitely. I love the art for that robot when it's just nicely shaded. It looks so cool. But yeah, not much else to say about the robot fight aside from the little interaction that Excalibur had with Auntie, which I thought was worthwhile. One thing I will say is that I did not expect the Auntie is a human plotline to express itself through his interactions with Excalibur. That is so strange to me. I really thought this was going to be Rika's plotline, and right now, while it does, like, Auntie's progression continues on a pretty good track, but removing Rika from this might take away from Rika, which is unfortunate because this was one of the main things she was kind of working on through the beginning of the season. So we'll have to see what happens next week. Overall, though, I really like the episode. I think between the combination of the way that the scenes were constructed, I think with the really cool, illogical nature of Akane and just her childishness, I'm really, favorite episode, no doubt. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. And again, apologies for the audio quality. Hopefully it wasn't too bad.